I am Betty Michelle, and I am beyond excited to have you join me for my podcast, The Purpose Talk, your weekly dose of inspiration, biblical truths, practical guidance, and heartfelt conversations, empowering you to live a life of purpose, creating the life you've always dreamed of. Each week, you'll join me to embark on a journey towards discovering your purpose, truly uncovering the unique gifts and talents that define you, and gaining clarity on the direction your life is meant to take. We will embark on a journey towards pursuing your dream, following the passions that ignite your soul, and turning your aspirations into reality with unwavering determination. Taking bold steps to live out your true calling and transforming your intentions into impactful actions that lead you to a fulfilling and purpose-driven life. So join me every week on this journey to pursue purpose. It's one worth taking. Let's go. Hi there. Welcome back to The Purpose Talk. I'm your host, Betty Michelle, and today we're diving into a powerful topic, the power of change, stepping into new possibilities. Many of you may feel like you're in a transformation season, a time when your life feels like it's shifting in profound ways. This season can be characterized by significant changes, whether they are personal, professional, or emotional, that challenge us to grow and evolve. Transformation seasons often push us out of our comfort zone, urging us to shed old habits, relationships, or mindsets that no longer serve our purpose. Transformation is one of life's most profound challenges, one we are rarely ever fully prepared for. It tends to creep in like an unexpected storm, often without warning, uprooting the comfortable routines we hold dear. Whether it's a sudden career shift, the loss of a relationship, or an internal change in our spirit, transformation can feel like it's robbing us of our comfort, our sense of control, and even our happiness. And yet, we often scramble, searching for a foothold to regain our balance. We can feel disoriented, as if something essential has been taken from us. And this uncertainty can leave us questioning, how do I get through this? Will I ever be okay again? And today, my friend, this episode will walk you through these hard questions and take you on a journey of discovering how, when we embrace change, we unlock doors to new purposes we never expected. But here's the reality. The discomfort of change is often a signal that something bigger is unfolding. It's the stretching, the breaking, and the shedding of old to make room for the new. So let's jump into it. We will discover how can major life changes lead to discovering new purposes. We will pursue by exploring the connection between change and self-discovery. And lastly, we will act, leveraging strategies for embracing change as a positive force in discovering your path. Now, transformation is defined as a thorough or dramatic change in form, appearance, or character. It can be understood as a significant shift in the way something or someone exists, moves, or behaves, resulting in a new state of being. This process often involves shedding of old habits, beliefs, or identities to embrace new ones that are aligned with growth, progress, or purpose. Let's dive into how a season of transformation can reveal more about who we are at our core as we move towards becoming the people God is calling us to be. And transformation is not just about change for the sake of it. It's about evolving in a way that is both meaningful and necessary for our growth. You see, this journey often begins by examining how we perceive and respond to change in our lives. How we view and embrace change can either propel us forward or keep us stuck in familiar, yet stagnant places. And I want to begin by exploring what it means to truly embrace the transformational power of change. You see, when we experience major changes, the immediate response is often resistance. Why? Great question. Because change disrupts our normalcy. But underneath this disruption lies something far greater, the opportunity to discover new paths. Think about the people of Israel as they wandered in the wilderness after leaving Egypt. The familiar was behind them, but ahead lay the promised land. They had to trust in God's plan for their lives despite the wilderness. In the same way, major life changes can strip away our perceived control, but it is often used by God to reveal new purposes for our lives. So here's the big question. What is this season of change revealing to you about your deeper purpose? And how is it aligning you with God's ultimate plan? Take the quote from Mandy Hale. Change is painful, but nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere you don't belong. This quote reminds us that change pushes us out of our comfort zones and forces us to confront parts of ourselves we may have neglected or even denied. It's no doubt change really is painful. It's not comfortable. It gets to the roots of things that we need to shed and no longer prioritize in our lives. But change is necessary. Consider the story of Moses. After killing an Egyptian, Moses fled Egypt and spent years in the desert, a place of isolation, uncertainty, and self-reflection. But it was there in the wilderness that he discovered his true calling. Moses' time away from the life he once knew led him to a deeper understanding of himself and God. His uncomfortable experience in the desert became the very crucible in which his leadership abilities were formed, ultimately leading him to his purpose as the deliverer of God's people. And you can find that in Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. In these uncomfortable and often painful spaces, we are pushed to learn who we really are. Like Moses, when we are placed in situations that stripped away what we once relied on, we are forced to look inward and confront the parts of ourselves that need growth and healing. In my own personal life, I've seen how transformation has required me to shed not just old habits, but also old relationships and mindset. It's been painful to release what felt familiar and comfortable, even when I knew those things were holding me back. Yet with each painful shift, I felt a sense of freedom emerge. And it's crazy because the process of letting go, of surrendering my plans, has opened the doors to deeper self-discovery and a sense of freedom that I can't explain. In trusting God's path, I've learned to lean into the unknown with faith, believing that every change is shaping me into the person God intends for me to be. So let's reflect here. How has change in your life uncovered parts of yourself that needed growth or healing? To help you answer this question, start by looking at the significant changes in your current life, whether they are personal, professional, or spiritual. Take a moment to think about how these changes make you feel. Did you initially resist them, or were you open to the process? Reflect on how these moments of transition revealed aspects of your character, personality, or faith that you previously overlooked. For example, maybe you faced a career change that forced you to develop resistance, that forced you to develop resilience or patience, or perhaps a personal relationship ended, leaving you to confront feelings of abandonment, insecurity, or self-worth that you haven't fully dealt with before. Whatever your situation is, you can ask yourself these 3 questions. What did this change reveal about my strengths and weaknesses? Were there patterns or behaviors I needed to release in order to grow? Did this experience bring unresolved emotional wounds to the surface that required healing? These reflections help us dig deeper into the truth that change, although often uncomfortable, is a mirror that reveals both our weaknesses and our potential. The Bible gives us many examples of how change is not just an inevitable part of life, but an essential component of spiritual growth. One of the most powerful stories of transformation is that of Job, and it is one of my go-to stories when I'm experiencing transformation or a season of change. As I sit here before you, I have to be real. This morning I started to record and didn't press record on the Zoom, I may add. But I started to record, and before I started to speak, I asked God to reveal for me, what story is it that I need the most because it's what I'm going through right now, and I want to provide people with content in real time. And the story of Job was placed on my heart. As I go through this story and I go through key components of Job's character and how he dealt with the transformational season, I want you to know that these are things that I am actively dealing with right now. Because you see, for me, I am in a season of loss. It's no secret that the job is gone, the 9 to 5. It's no secret that I've lost relationships as part of that job loss. It's no secret that I've gained relationships. But I'm also going through a shift where I am losing so many things as mentioned before, and I'm having to understand and know how to deal with those things. And it requires my faith. So as I bring the story of Job to you, one of the most powerful stories in the Bible about transformation, I want you to know that I bring it to you at a point in my life where I am exercising some of the exact things that I'm saying here today. Because no matter the shift in your life and no matter the change, it requires unwavering faith and it requires resilience and perseverance like no other. And for some of us, that may come easy, and for others, it may not. And even in the moments where I think I am strong, I'm mostly reminded that I am weak and I need God the most. But what I want to explore today is not just the need for God, but what do we do in relationship with God when He is taking, and removing things away from us that no longer serve us? What do we do in relations with God when we have lost all sense of control? When in our own power, we cannot show up and resolve anything that we are experiencing because the season or the chapter of transformation is so grand that all we can do is scream for help. And for most of us, that scream is silent because we don't know how to really express the magnitude of the pain or the suffering we're enduring during the season of change. So I think that it is only fitting that I speak to Job's story, a journey through loss and faith. It's only fitting that I bring it to you from a biblical perspective so that you understand and know that all you have to do is show up with faith the size of a mustard seed and a willingness to believe God for His promises and to trust that He has already worked this season out for you. To trust that He has gone before you to set the path straight so that as you approach each day, you are making strides towards where He wants you to be. Strives out of a season of transformation and into a season of abundance. So let's get into Job. Job is a character who experiences one of the most dramatic transformations in the Bible. He was a man of great wealth and standing, with a large family, vast possessions, and deep faith in God. But the devil plays a crucial role in this dramatic transformation in his life. You see, in the beginning, we see Job as a prosperous man who is faithful to God. However, the devil, my goodness, he shows up and challenges Job's integrity, suggesting that he only serves God because of the blessings he has received. And this sets the stage for a test of faith as God allows the devil to take away Job's possessions and inflict suffering upon him, all while sparing his life. You can reference it in Job chapter 1, verse 6 through 12. But don't miss this. God allows the devil to take away Job's possession and inflict suffering upon him. You see, for some of us, we feel like when we're going through change, that the devil has some type of power. But I want to point out for you today that the devil cannot do anything to you that God Himself has not allowed, and that He has no power when it comes to the power and the magnitude of who God is. So God allows this devil. He allows this devil to take away Job's possessions and inflict suffering upon him. In an instant, everything was taken from Job. His livestock, wealth, and children, all gone in a series of devastating tragedy. The devil's intent is so clear: to lead Job to curse God and turn away from his faith. Hear me well. The devil's intent is so clear to lead you to curse God and turn away from your faith. That's what he intended for Job, and that's what he intends for you. But despite these unimaginable losses, Job remains steadfast, demonstrating remarkable resilience and unwavering faith. But Job's response to the calamity is mind-blowing. He mourns deeply, but still praises God, uttering the famous words, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Imagine the deep sorrow and shock Job must have felt. Everything he's worked so hard for taken away. Everything he owns removed. His most prized possessions, his children, gone. In a series of events. So it doesn't all happen at once. It continues to happen, event after event after event, enough to break him completely. But in his deep sorrow and shock, he does not curse God. He acknowledges that God is the one who gave, and God is the one who can take it away. And blessed be the name of the Lord. But hear me, the story doesn't stop there. Shortly after losing all of his possessions and his family, Job's health is attacked. So I lost my livestock, I've lost my possession, I've lost my wealth, I've lost my family, and now my health is deteriorating. He was afflicted with painful sores from head to toe. His situation became so unbearable that his own wife told him to curse God and die. Yet Job's response is profound here again. Job chapter 2, verse 10. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? So how many of us are only looking for God to show up and give and provide and produce good fruit? But when things go sideways, we don't understand and know how to exercise our faith the same way as when things were good. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? Think about it. You see, through Job's unimaginable loss, his faith remains unwavering. He did not curse God or turn away from him, though he lamented his situation and cried out in anguish. Job 122 tells us, in all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. You see, Job's steadfast faith and character are the highlight of his story. He did not allow his circumstances to dictate his faith. His faith remained strong regardless of his circumstance and his situation. Even his own wife turned away from him and told him to curse God and be done with life itself. So in a sense, he lost his wife too. And it doesn't stop there. Job's friends later come over to comfort him, but instead of helping him, they accuse him of wrongdoing, implying that he must have sinned to deserve such punishment. And Job is found defending his integrity, maintaining that he has done nothing to warrant such suffering. You see, his friends' lack of understanding only added to his isolation and pain. But still, Job clung to God and maintained his belief that God was just, even when he couldn't understand why he was suffering. If you're in a season of transformation or a season of change, do you really understand why you're going through what you're going through, or why you're suffering at the hand of the enemy? And if your answer is no, that's okay. Because for most of us, myself included, we do not understand. But God is trying to show us something and develop something within us. That is my core belief. That seasons of change or transformation often reveal something that needs to be released so that we can make room for something that needs to be added. Those new possibilities, so to speak. And in this part of Job's story, he does not understand why he's suffering, but he maintains his belief that God is just. One of the most notable aspects of Job's story is his willingness to question and wrestle with God, yet never abandon his faith. Job 13:15 captures this sentiment beautifully. Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him. Job's relationship with God was one of deep trust and submission, even when the world around him fell apart. To be stripped of everything, to lose all that you have worked for and all that you have gained as a righteous man must have been overbearing, must have been out of this world suffering. Yet Job holds on to the one thing that he has control of. The one thing is his faith. And not only does he hold on to his faith, but he shows up in submission and surrender. Oftentimes, we try so hard to control these types of seasons. I must hold on or grip hold to something that I can control so that I think that I have some level of power, some level of focus, some level of control, some sense of what is happening in my life. But you see, the problem with that is that your grip is so tight yet empty. And God is waiting for you to simply release and open your hands and surrender. Because it's in these seasons that we find ourselves the most out of control for lack of understanding in our suffering. And Job shows us here that there is power in simply believing, trusting, and submitting to God's plan. And as we continue on with Job's suffering, we have to look at God's response. After Job's lengthy discord with his friends, his wife, and everyone that's saying, hey, you must have done something to deserve this. Hey, curse God, be done with yourself, right? God eventually speaks to Job, but not with answers and explanations. You see, Job is reminded of God's sovereignty and majesty. God doesn't show up and answer the questions that need to be answered because we demanded an answer or an explanation. Instead, God shows us that He is God and God for a reason. He is sovereign above all. So in his response to Job, he reveals himself in the whirlwind and he asks Job questions that showcase the vastness of his creation and his power. And this interaction humbles Job and he acknowledges God's greatness, saying, I know that you can do anything and no one can stop you. Job chapter 42, verse 2. He acknowledges God's greatness by saying, you can do anything because you are sovereign, because you are God, because you are your majesty, and no one can stop you. So who are we when we try to question or control our season of change? You see, Job's response is one of repentance and deep understanding. He realizes that while he has spoken of things beyond his understanding, God's ways are always higher and his plans always better. And I would even go as far as to say his plans always good. So how do we show up in a season of change when we're out of control by questioning and demanding explanation? Why do we show up that way? Instead, I want us to look at Job's character and how he handles the situation. He realizes that things are beyond his understanding because God's ways are always higher and his plans always good. My friend, the plan that he has for your life is better than any plan that you can cook up or imagine. It's better than your wildest dream. His plan is good. His plan is just. His plan is the ultimate plan. You see, because he goes before us, he sees things that we cannot see. He clears our paths so that we can champion forward doing the things that he's called us to do. And when we are off track, he has to bring us back. And oftentimes it's in seasons of change because he's requiring us to shed the things that no longer serve us. So who are we to question and demand explanation? Instead, Job teaches us to simply surrender to God's plan. And when we surrender to God's plan, he starts to replenish and restore us in ways we never imagined. For Job, the deep transformation came with just this. God restores his fortune. And here's the key. God didn't give Job back what he lost. Instead, he gave him double of everything he had before. Job 42:10 tells us that Job's health was restored. Job had more children, and his wealth was greater than it had ever been before. Job 42:12 says the Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former part. My friend, if we can just hang on in the season of transformation with all the changes around us, if we could just weather the storm and walk hand in hand with God, He will bless us double for our trouble. He will restore us and give us more than we could ever imagine. But you see, He cannot do that with our hands gripped tight, trying to control everything. We simply have to open our hands in full surrender. So I ask you, what is God calling you to surrender to Him in this season of transformation? The story of Job is not just a story of restoration. It is a story of abundance grace. God's replenishment was a symbol of His favor and faithfulness. Job's perseverance, his refusal to let go of his faith in the face of unimaginable loss resulted in a season of abundance that exceeded anything he had ever known. We need to be in a season of abundance. It shall be no other way. So what is God calling us to surrender to Him so that He can show up and work to bring us from a season of transformation into a season of abundance? You see, Job's story teaches us three things about faith and surrender. One, God sees beyond our understanding. Even when we cannot comprehend the suffering we face, God is working out a plan for our good. Romans 8:28. Job's losses were not arbitrary. They were part of a divine plan that ultimately led to his greater blessing. My friend, God sees beyond your understanding. He goes before you in this way. Number two, Job's story teaches us that faithfulness amid suffering leads to abundance. Job's commitment to God, even in the worst of times, resulted in blessings beyond what he could have imagined. His restoration was not just material, but spiritual. He gained a deeper understanding of God's character while growing his own character. Abundance comes in different shapes, forms, and fashion. Job's story is a reminder of spiritual abundance. I don't know about you, but I can use spiritual abundance, especially in this season of my life. And lastly, Job's story teaches us that God rewards surrender. My goodness. God rewards surrender. When Job surrendered his right to understand everything and accepted God's sovereignty, his life was transformed. It was during that time that God did the most work, that God not only responded, but He showed up and executed His plan for Job's life. This echoes the promises in Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Are you ready to receive your harvest? If so, you must surrender. So again, Job's story teaches us God sees beyond our understanding. Faithfulness amid suffering leads to abundance, and God rewards surrender. So here is what I want you to reflect on as we look at the teachings of Job's story. How can Job's story inspire you to trust in God's sovereignty during your season of transformation? And what might God be preparing to restore or replenish in your life as a result of your perseverance? Job's story shows us that even in our darkest hours, there are steps we can take to remain faithful and embrace changes as a positive force. So as you think about these questions, I want you to think about these steps: surrendering control, reframing the narrative, faith-filled action, and patience in the process. What does it look like to surrender control? Job's story begins and ends with his recognition that God is in control, not him. What does it look like to reframe the narrative? Like Job, we must look beyond our immediate circumstances and trust that change is part of God's plan for growth. We need to see change not as a loss, but as a realignment with God's greater purpose for our life. Job's story teaches us faith-filled action. We must continue moving forward, trusting that God's plan for us is good. And again, Romans 8:28 reminds us of this. As we know that all things works together for the good of those who love him. And lastly, we must have patience in the process. Change takes time. And sometimes we need to wait on God's timing. But what is it that we're doing in the waiting? Because you see, it's in the waiting where your character is developed the most. And Galatians 6:9 does encourage us. Do not give up, because in due time we will reap a harvest if we remain faithful. By looking at Job's life, we see that no matter how great the loss, no matter how dark the night, God is always at work, leading us toward a future filled with hope, restoration, and abundance. My friend, you simply have to keep the faith, embrace the change, and know that God is not done with your story yet. Alan Watts says, the only way to make sense of our change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. We have to get out of the moping, out of the crying, out of the screams, out of the doubt, and out of the fear to dance a little in this season of transformation. The only way to make sense of it is to embrace it, is to take it on as a challenge and to know that God is going before us and working it out for our good. And as I wrap up with today's episode, I encourage you to reflect on the change you're experiencing in your life. Is it stripping away your comfort? Is it forcing you to reevaluate who you are and what you believe? You have to remember that change is not meant to destroy you, but to build you up for a greater purpose. And you have to trust God with the unknown, knowing that He's gone before you to make your path straight. Reflect on this. What is God asking me to release in this season? And how is He inviting me to grow? It's in these moments of reflection that we start to see a better picture of what is truly happening in our lives. And make no mistake, that may not come with answers, but if you continue to do the things we talked about today, surrender control, reframe the narrative, have faith-filled action, and practice patience in the process, you'll start to see God move in ways you could never imagine. And I want that for you. I want you to go from a season of transformation into a season of abundance. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Purpose Talk, as we've explored the power of change and stepping into new possibilities. Again, transformation is not something that happens overnight. It's a journey of growth, adaptation, and intentional creation. And the key is to simply embrace it, recognizing that it's not about choosing one path over the other, but about finding harmony in the transitions and trusting that every shift is guiding you towards a more meaningful life. Be encouraged, my friend. Trust in the process and honor the transformation unfolding within you. You have the power to step into new possibilities. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, keep pursuing purpose, keep embracing change, and as always, stay blessed.